Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm sure by now everybody has heard this story before, but I want to emphasize this and I want to talk about this. So you had this former undercover New York City police officer who prepared a letter on his deathbed, and this letter was recently released. And in this letter, he basically talks about the role that he played in the assassination of Malcolm X. And he also talks about the role that the FBI and the New York City police played in this brother's assassination. And when I first saw this story, I said, we already know that the FBI and the police played some kind of role in this assassination. Like that had been common knowledge. But this particular letter is like a smoking gun, as Sean King has pointed out. I will post a link to the letter in the description box so that you all can read it for yourself. And what I'm going to do is just summarize some of the things in the letter and then just provide further commentary on this issue. So this officer's name was Raymond Wood. He served in the New York City Police Department from 1964 to 1971. He served as an undercover police officer. He mentioned how basically he was put into a situation where he was forced to serve as an agent against his own people, to betray his own people. He says that he was threatened with charges of alcohol trafficking and marijuana, and he faced some jail time if he did not comply with them. And basically, they were putting trumped up charges on this brother, and they were going to frame him and set him up so that he would be locked up for a significant amount of time if he did not go along with what they wanted him to do. That's what he alleges. Now, he talked about how one of his roles was basically to serve as an agent provocateur. That was one of his roles. And basically, what an agent provocateur is somebody whose job is to lure activists, real activists, into engaging in criminal activity so that they can have them locked up and framed up and basically neutralized. And also, by locking them up and neutralizing them, they are able to discredit the movement to which they are affiliated with. So one of the things that these agents do is they come up with these plots and these schemes to get activists lured into these plots. In this particular situation, there was some kind of plot to destroy the Statue of Liberty. And so what this agent did, and his name is Raymond Wood, what he basically did was he lured two key members of Malcolm X security detail to get involved in some kind of plot so that they could place them under arrest for felonious uh, felony federal charges so that they could lock them up and to prevent them from serving as security on Malcolm X's detail. And these two people, again, were key personnel in his security detail. They were key people that were going to be in place at the Audubon Ballroom on the day the brother was assassinated. And because they weren't there, Malcolm X was vulnerable. And this was by design. This was a deliberate plot to have these brothers locked up so that they would not be there to protect Malcolm X from the assassins. So this tells you that there was an elaborate plot to assassinate Malcolm X. They first neutralized his key security personnel, thereby making it easy for these people to come in and kill this brother, assassinate this brother, take this brother out. So that's one of the things that the story, that this particular letter talks about. It talks about how these brothers were caught up into this plot initiated by this agent provocateur. They were arrested shortly before the day that Malcolm X was to speak at the Audubon Ballroom, and that just left him completely vulnerable, made him an easy target, and made it possible for those people to assassinate the brother. So you have the New York Police Department involved. You have the FBI involved because they're the ones that locked these brothers up to prevent them from protecting the brother Malcolm X. And it's far more to it than that. I'm sure that there's more to it than that. I'm sure that some of the people that actually pulled the trigger, um, were actually agents, actual agents for the federal government or the New York Police Department. And, in this particular letter, he talks about how they arrested basically the wrong person. One of the people who was arrested was not one of the shooters, and that was designed to protect this undercover agent's identity, to protect this undercover agent, Raymond Wood. Um, so you have a brother locked up for trumped up charges for assassinating Malcolm X when he had nothing to do with the assassination. And there's an excellent documentary on Netflix about the assassination of Malcolm X. I will post a link to the trailer for that documentary. I encourage people to watch it. It goes into detail about the assassination of Malcolm X. It alludes to the role that the federal government played, but it also talks about the role of members of the Nation of Islam. And that's a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have. They don't want to talk about the role that the Nation of Islam played in this thing. Of course, you had the FBI, CIA, and, local police authorities in New York involved in the assassination, but you actually had members of the Nation of Islam that participated in this brother's assassination as well. And you had leaders in the high ranks of the Nation of Islam fail to act. In fact, actually encouraging through their actions and their words the assassination of Malcolm X. And they cannot pretend like they had no role in this. They cannot pretend like they had absolutely nothing to do with it, especially when you have somebody like Farrakhan talking about Malcolm X is worthy of death, especially when you have the Nation of Islam's own newspaper that Malcolm X helped create, actually featuring cartoons joking about the death of Malcolm X, labeling him as a hypocrite, having a cartoon depicting him with his head decapitated, bouncing up and down. Those are signals, those are green lights for people to assassinate Malcolm X. And then when you have Elijah Muhammad's own son basically making statements, basically encouraging the assassination of Malcolm X, talking about how his tongue should have been cut out and sent to the messenger and stuff like that. Those type of statements. When you had the Nation of Islam, the leader of the Nation of Islam, he could have stopped all this tension between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X right away, but he failed to act. So I'm not going to be on here pretending like the Nation of Islam had nothing to do with the assassination of Malcolm X. They played a role. Members of the Nation of Islam played a role. You had this one brother who's identified in the documentary who they revealed that he was actually one of the killers. And this killer did not serve a day in jail. This killer was walking around free. This killer was being supported by elected officials. This killer had sanctuary. This killer was living his best life while you had people who had nothing to do with the assassination of Malcolm X locked up. And the question is why? What did that man know? Who was he connected to? What were his ties to the FBI, the New York Police Department, and to the Nation of Islam? He was a member of the Nation of Islam. So again, I encourage people to watch that documentary. This assassination of Malcolm X is one of the most horrific things that has happened in our history as a people. He was one of our greatest leaders, and we owe it to him and his family to demand answers from the federal government. They need to release all the records that they have about the assassination of Malcolm X. And another thing that I cannot neglect to talk about is the fact that, some of those killers came from the Newark Mosque. And shortly before the assassination of Malcolm X, Minister Louis Farrakhan was in that mosque, at that mosque. And that is something that's serious. And that's something that really needs to be discussed. And we need to quit glossing over things and pretending like the Nation of Islam had no involvement at all. When you look at what happened, when you look at the tensions between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X, there was a role that, members of the Nation of Islam played in this thing. But even more significant than that is the role of the federal government and the New York Police Department. That needs to be thoroughly investigated. And there should be justice for the family of Malcolm X. These children, Malcolm X's daughters witnessed this brother being shot and killed right in front of them. They were deprived of a provider. They were deprived of a father. They were deprived of a protector in their lives and stuff like that. And the federal government needs to compensate the family if they have not already done so. And I doubt that they have done so. They need to compensate that family for assassinating that brother. He is a part of the long list of martyrs that we have had in the black community. Anytime a black man or a black woman stands up in a bold, courageous way, uncompromisingly for their people, too often they're locked up, too often they're assassinated. That is the pattern that we have seen. And, it makes me ask a question like, how is it that Farrakhan's been around all these years? I mean, and I do respect the Nation of Islam. Like, Farrakhan is 80-something years old. Like, I want to know the full record. I want to know what happened. And we need to press for a release of these records. We need to press on our elected officials to release these records. And as the family has demanded, we need to open or reopen the investigation of the assassination of Malcolm X. If this country is to move forward, this country, America needs to, make reconciliation with its past. Just like they had in South Africa, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we need that here to unveil, and reveal the full story of what happened with the brother Malcolm X. You got all these records with names blotted out. We need complete records. So those are my thoughts about this situation. It's very, very relevant, and I recently did a video about the assassination of Fred Hampton, about the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. And you will see a pattern here. You will see a pattern of these agent provocateurs who face charges and are forced to comply with the government and all that kind of stuff and be spies and agent provocateurs. And then you see the assassination of black male leadership. So those are my thoughts. Tell me what you all think about this. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. Peace and blessings. Have a great day.